So today I have Mark Menezes with me. You've been able to organically grow your social media to nearly 20% of the local population of Riverside, right? You have a very local focused brand, which I think is amazing. I did a video yesterday kind of talking about influencer marketing, and you're something that I mentioned in there because um, even if you don't have millions of followers, you can still make a huge impact. I mean, 60,000 is extremely impressive, so I'm not taking away from that, but yeah, you can have good reach. So kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and then we can kind of get into the journey and maybe some advice for people.
Yeah, I think to kind of dive in and tackle your question, to get that large of a percentage of just the population of Riverside in this area to follow me in that period of time, which when you're in the trenches doing it for 2 years, it feels like forever. But from the outside, I can see like, gosh, just 2 years and that happened. There's some people they've been slaving away at an Instagram account for 15 years. So
Yeah.
I think when I went into it, I listened to a lot of people. I try to study a lot, whether it's just business, entrepreneurial stuff to content creation and social media and the current landscape. And one of the things I heard back then when I was getting started was I can't remember who said it was on a podcast, and someone was talking about the current landscape of social media. And he said, people follow people. And that phrase just kind of stuck with me. And so as I went into it and thinking, a lot of it was unintentional. I guess a lot was intentional, and a lot was just figuring out along the way because it's kind of the Wild West, the whole social media content creation, especially trying to do what I'm doing. There's not really a roadmap for
Yeah.
it or
Yeah. A lot of followers at this point, like
y-
trying to do what you did, but
yeah. And thinking about, okay, if people follow people, it, what is it that makes someone wants to be someone's friend, or what is it that someone wants to be involved in someone's life in real life, right?
yeah.
And then take those things into that social media and say, okay, so people like to hang out with people that they trust is a huge part. It's like
Yeah.
once you lose, whether it's a friend or a relationship or a significant other, once trust is lost, then the thing just will deteriorate no matter how strong the foundation
Right.
is. So kind of looking at that, like, okay, so people want to be friends with people that they trust, people they like, people they can relate to, people that maybe they have something in common. So I think some of it was intentional, some of it was just natural. But I think the things specifically that have happened, one is that I've always just tried to be myself. Like I was wearing black before I did it. I didn't just say I'm gonna start wearing black because I'm gonna
Gotcha.
be a content creator.
Right.
So being genuine is probably top of the list. So I going into it, I knew, but just part of my personality, like people that have always known me is like, yeah, Mark's Mark. He's just always the same. He talks the same. His fluctuation, like
Nice.
he's just him. So that was the one thing. Like I know I need to be myself, which is easy because it's hard for me to be different. It's hard for me to not. I feel like I'm a fish out of water if I'm trying to be someone different.
Right. Right.
I think the other one being trust was I knew that the goal and the vision of the page had to be for Riverside and for the city,
Hmm.
and not so much for me or not even for the people at first. But I went into it, and that was genuine too. Growing up in Riverside and then leaving, and most of my adult life, I was on the East Coast and coming back and seeing. I remember the first comment I had when I came back. It was a friend from high school, and he's like, "Are you serious? You moved back to Riverside? Like, why would you move back to Riverside?" And I had lived all over the country. I traveled all over the world in my 20s. And so I saw, like, I lived in the Northeast and outside Boston. I lived in the Carolinas and Texas and went to just about every single state at some point. He's like, why in the world would you come back to Riverside? Did you lose your mind? And for me, it was interesting because even though I'd been to all these places, I'd been to exotic, beautiful places. I'd never been anywhere that felt like home to me.
Hmm.
And I was gone for, I think, 17, 18 years. And like, that feeling when you get when you're at someone else's house at night watching a movie or a football game and you're not quite comfortable on the
Yeah.
couch.
Yeah. You can't stretch out the same way, or you're
Yeah.
thinking the
Like, I'm
whole
not
time
going to,
about being there, or, not invading their space or whatever.
yeah, like, I'm not going to take my shoes off. But then maybe you're at like your parents' house, so you're a little more comfortable. Maybe
Yeah.
you'll take your shoes off, but you're not gonna
Still not the same.
still not the same. Then you
Yeah.
get to your house. So it's like I had places that felt like my parents' house. I had places that just felt like friends' house. But in almost 20 years, I never felt like I was home
Wow.
till I came back. So a big part of what I did was birth out of that. That was the kind of unintentional part. But now I can see my motivation isn't to get likes or followers or make money or to be recognized. Like I don't care about any of that stuff for the reason I'm doing it. It
Yeah.
really started with that. Like Riverside really is a great place. Our proximity to the beach and
Dude, you
the
can do
mount.
anything in an hour. You could ski on water or snow. You could go in the dirt. You could go to the, I mean, there's, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
And we have so many of the great things about California, but not necessarily all the negative things like that LA or Orange County has. Like, yeah, we have homeless. Yeah, we have all those things, but it's not quite the same. But I guarantee you in South Carolina, there's a bunch of problems too that
Mhm.
are different
Yeah.
and all the other places. So yeah, I think that that's a big part of it.
I think that, I mean, there's a lot that you just, that I could touch on right there. So I have a question that I'm going to ask after this, but I think it's important to kind of retouch on the people follow people,
Yeah,
right? We mentioned before we started, we were talking a little bit, and I said we do like a lot of dentists, and that's kind of our target. Um, and as I said, like just trying to post like dental implants and you should floss and stuff like that. Nobody cares, right? And that's something I try to talk to them about. But if they're interesting, right? And it's not for everybody, right?
right, right.
Um, but if they're interesting and they want to kind of build up their personal brand, and there's a lot of like Hermosi and a lot of different people that really touch on that personal brand thing, and I think
Yeah,
that's something that, as I mentioned to you, we do social media, um, but more as like consistency and to put content out there for them and stuff like that. We don't try to pitch it as like a big lead generator that we're going to make them an influencer, or we're going to get them tens of thousands of followers. But that personal brand stuff is so important to anybody that does want to get out there, because I think you're right. Like people follow some companies, but like the ones that get, in my experience, the companies that have a lot of followers paid for a lot of, not bought like fake followers, but did promotions, did
for
ran
sure.
follower ads, ran
Yep,
paid media to get followers, and then they get the followers and they'll get interaction. But it wasn't because they really cared about the subject matter, right? Like they did contests and they did things to incentivize it. So
yep.
um, I think that's such an important thing for our viewers to think about is, do you want to be a personal brand, right? Because you're going to have to kind of put your life out there, and you could choose what to show or what not to show. You've kind of involved your family more recently, I think, than you were
Hmm.
before, which I think is awesome, right? Like I think that's cool, but that's a decision you had to make, right? Do I want your son? I think, right?
Yep,
Do I want my son to be in this? Like you were talking about, people are randomly taking pictures now. Do I want my son? Like I'm sure you had
yeah,
some thoughts about whether you expose them to that or not, and that's what people I think would have to think about. So,
yeah,
so I think that's killer, and something that people should take away from this. And then the question I had, you went away and you came back. I did the same. I was gone for 5 or 6 years. I came back because my father-in-law is pretty connected. Well, he has a lot of relationships. He's not like rich or super powerful or connected, whatever, but
yeah,
he has a lot of relationships. So I was like, I need to start a business. I should do it where I have some opportunity.
for sure.
Um, but when you did make that choice to come back, did you set out to and you chose to kind of start doing social media about Riverside for the reasons of sharing Riverside versus financial gains or whatever? But what kind of triggered that doing it, period? You know what I mean? Like what
Yeah,
made you want to get on social media? Did you just like report, or did you have a vision of not necessarily maybe being famous like you said or rich or whatever, but did you have a vision of the outcome that you were kind of looking for? What kind of
yeah,
triggered that decision to get out there?
yeah. That's a good one. Can we hit the people follow people and like the dentist thing? Because like,
Yeah,
and then we'll
absolutely, man.
come back to that.
Free form, take whatever
Yeah.
you want to talk about. I'm open.
I want to hit that because that's so important. I think there's people that are listening that it's just very important.
Yeah.
So realizing that, the landscape of social media that people do follow people. And when I started this 2 years ago, first almost 2 years, didn't charge any business, didn't make any money, shooting every day, posting 1 to 2 times a day, which is nearly a full-time job.
Dude, it is.
It's more than 5 days a
It's
week.
a, it's a, it's a work. It's work for sure.
Um, People that haven't done it wouldn't realize it, but it really is. Um, and so 2 years ago when I started it and not monetizing it, and I knew that I needed to just keep kicking the monetization rock down the road until I find the right spot. I didn't want to take pennies and give up dollars in the end. But my main motivation was I don't want to take money and lose the trust. I don't want to take money where I'm not supposed to and where I shouldn't, where
Mhm.
it's not the best way for me to take
Well,
money
yeah,
and
and
lose
not,
trust.
you don't want your content to be purchased,
Right.
right? Like you go to places and talk about food because it's good, right?
Exactly.
Like if your audience, and it's an assumption, but now if your audience learns that your people are paying you to come and talk about their food,
Exactly.
now you're just making commercials. You're not, sharing what you love, and like you said, it'll erode the trust factor for
Yeah.
sure.
Then you lose trust. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty common if we go out, like we went out to eat last night and I get up to go to the restroom and a table stops me and they're Mark, we're here right now because we saw your video this morning. They were like so excited. And we were just there having dinner, but they were literally there. And they said, yeah, when you mentioned this place, we knew we would like it.
That's awesome.
So obviously I'm not going to be perfect with it, but by not taking money, it's going to at least make that
Well, you
a
still
lot
have to.
easier.
You, you still have to survive, right? Like
Yeah.
we're in a like money drives survival in our world, right? So
Yeah.
I love that you're trying to be careful with it, and um, maybe we'll come back to the why it started because this triggers another question in my mind is um, being able to kick that down the road and still have this business and essentially a full time job. How were you able to balance that, where you were focused on that, and, and still keeping yourself alive, right? And
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's when I started it, I had been in publishing for 12, 13 years, and I had a real estate magazine that I had started here in the Inland Empire. And I ended up leaving the relationship, or the relationship I was in ended, and that business basically ended. So I found myself about 3 years ago kind of needing to essentially start over in every
mm,
area of my life. So I had been in publishing, been very successful at 6 different magazines that I owned. I was a national trainer for a big national publishing company, and found myself basically my life coming to a screeching halt and figuring out now what am I going to do.
mm,
So I'd been in and around the real estate world for a while. So I got my real estate license. I'm like, I've been working with top agents all over the country because we had that magazine in 110 markets all over the
okay,
city.
nice.
So I had connection or knew a lot of the best agents in every single major market in the US and had done that for 6, 7 years. Um, and had been in sales and owned my own business. So I'm like, I can do real estate. So I got my license at the beginning of that. And I did well. I closed 6 deals in my first 6 months, which they say it
Nice.
takes like 6 months for an agent to get their
And that
first
sounds
deal.
killer. Yeah, I don't even know the industry, but I know that
Yeah. So
some people are hoping for that
they're like,
ever.
they're like, it will take 6 months to get one. And I got six in 6 months. So I did well, but I just didn't enjoy it. I hated it. I'm trying to be nice, but I didn't like it at all. And so previous to that, being in the publishing world, the magazine in 2000, probably 15, I had launched probably my fourth magazine that I was doing. I was still in the back east, and so it was Facebook and Instagram starting to take hold at that time. Like I was on all the way back in MySpace. So as soon as social media hit, I was very intrigued, always interested and intrigued by it. Actually, I remember even before MySpace, just early internet days, having the thought, because at that point I was like, maybe 10, 12 years outside of high school. There was no social media. So you weren't seeing all those people that you went to high school with, old friends, kids
Right,
you
right.
played soccer with.
Yeah.
If you moved out of state, you just never saw them again. You never knew what happened to their life. And so I remember like being in my late 20s, 10 years out of high school and having that, just being on the internet. And there was this website called like classmates.com, and you
Yeah,
had
I
to pay
remember
like
classmate.
$80 a month and you
I
could
think it's
just,
still around actually.
is it?
Yeah.
And I remember going on there, I'm like, I'm not going to pay for this, but having the thought like, man, it'd be amazing if this was like free and it was like kind of this community where you could, talk to your old friends and see them
Yeah.
figure out what's up in their life. And so anyway, so I've always very intrigued by social media from the beginning. So when I started real estate, oh sorry, go back. So that magazine 2015 video was really starting to take off, especially on Facebook at the time. And I had the realization that okay, times are changing, right? With the internet and with social media and where it looks like social media is heading, where essentially a magazine is just an advertising piece. We're doing articles that we can sell advertising,
Yeah.
try to sell somebody something. So seeing social media and the attention it was already getting, the attention it had in my life, it had my attention, and seeing more and more people get on Facebook and then Instagram,
Yeah.
more and more people, and then being on it more and more. And so I'm like, okay, if I stay in this industry, I'm going to become Blockbuster Video. And so went really heavy on social media. Then we did a podcast in 2015 called Beyond the Pages, where I would interview the cover story, and it was
Nice.
just an in-depth conversation about them. We started a weekly vlog where we documented the process of putting the magazine out. So
Yeah.
going to the photo shoots, meeting with the real estate agents, and that was a big part of allowing it to just take off. And then when we'd have an event, we would do, which now social media wants stuff that's less produced, but at the time we would do really nice
Yeah,
produced
yeah.
like
To kind of
commercials,
swung back to that, huh?
yeah, to get people out to these events, which was really successful. So we were really heavy on social media and video content.
Nice.
And then I had the realization probably a few years ago where it was like a light bulb moment where I'm like, wait a minute, my job is to put out this traditional or like old school marketing piece. In order for me to market it, I'm using social media to market. So subconsciously, I realized that everyone's attention's over here on social media. I want their attention to be in my magazine. So I'm going to go to social media, get their attention, try to bring them to my magazine to
Right.
get their attention, then try to give my advertiser, get my advertiser's attention by them.
Yeah.
Like, this is kind of
And bring it back to
ridiculous.
social media, maybe to follow up on
And then
your
bring it back to
blog and
social
everything.
media. So that was my first realization, like, okay, this, in terms of traditional marketing and
Yeah.
this media,
This channel is going to be,
for me, this is, there will always be some version, some niche version of print, I think.
yeah,
But I was like, me as someone that likes to think outside the box and needs to be creative and constantly evolving, I'm like, this is a dead end
I dig it.
type thing. So then I got my real estate license, and I had already been going hard on social media and video for my magazine, but it was
Mhm.
never about me. I guess I was in the vlog, so I was kind of like the host of it,
Yeah.
or the person in it. So when I started real estate, that 6 months, I started basically what is my page now. And the first thing in real estate, they said, farm a neighborhood, or like, if you work out, then just find your community. Find
Mhm.
your community, whether it's your neighborhood, where you work out, where you go to church, and then go hard. And then hopefully you can help all those people buy and sell homes. And I had been away from California for so long. It's like, I don't really have a community
Mhm.
here. And my community were all the best real estate agents in the Inland Empire. And I'm not going to get them to use me.
Yeah. That's not going to, yeah.
So it's like, my community that I built here for those 3 years was real estate. Um, so so my thought was, okay, why are they farming a neighborhood? They farm a neighborhood because they want to be seen in that neighborhood as the expert, the person that, you know, as an expert to their neighborhood,
Yeah.
to their area.
Yeah.
So my thought was, what if I'm the expert of Riverside? Then I think I'll probably get clients from that. And so that's kind of how it started. And I was just do a video here and there. I think my first food one was the substation. I had done a couple, like I did one on the Wood Streets. I did a video on the Mission Grove neighborhood that I grew up in. So try to put content out about Riverside
Yeah.
to build my real estate business. And then the first one I did, I think, was on the substation. And a buddy of mine went, and he's like, "Hey, let me take a shot of you taking a bite of the sandwich." I'm like, "Nah, I'm not putting myself in the video." But I knew that was the right thing at the
That
time.
moment.
I knew it was, but I was like, you know what, I know it's better, but I'll be just as good without being in it. Um, and so
But
we
nope.
did, and
That
then
was a turning
that
point.
was a turning point. And as he was shooting it, I'm like, yeah, this is, I know. I gave into it at that point. But
So that kind of triggered, like, you obviously have, you have a style, you kind of have, a pattern or a structure to a lot of the videos that you do, showing, doing the showing it,
yeah,
showing the bite, showing that. So that kind of stuff kind of evolved from that moment. I guess you've kind of developed
yeah,
how they go out. Um, on the personal brand thing too, keep going back to it, but it is so important. Um, Similarly, so obviously this is our space too, right?
yeah,
And we were trying to put out stuff on ours where I wasn't in it with just videos. I didn't want to be in it, same kind of a thing, right? Um, and then I found that once I try to do like a weekly. I don't do anywhere near like the content you were telling me to do. Like, you guys are
yeah,
so much time, right? Even just doing, I try to do a weekly video, and then I try to do like a chamber update or a local update or whatever, and try to keep stuff out there. Um, but the things I wanted to kind of emphasize on there is one, the personal brand thing. It makes a huge difference, right? People
yeah,
care. People are going to like it.
yeah.
If they see a flyer or a whatever from the company, it's not the same, right?
No, people do follow people.
And then something that you maybe experienced more in the beginning that I'm sure you don't have to deal with now, but um, just because you're not, and you did mention like you didn't do it for the numbers, right? And I think people need to, like, people stress out about them not getting likes and they'll deter them. But one of the things that I'm kind of learning more now is we don't get a ton of engagement on a lot of like the videos and stuff I post. There's a lot of consistent people that do it, but what I'm finding out is people do watch it, people do see it, people do learn from it, right? And they just might not like it. So just, I guess I just want to say, like, if you're not getting that engagement, you're not seeing it grow, but also keep your ears open, right? Because like I did a short video on the ARPA grant. Two people I know that didn't like or comment on it, I'm sure of it, both applied because they saw that video, and they
Hmm.
both are probably going to get, like 10 or 20 grand.
Yeah.
So it made an impact, but I didn't get the numbers, right? So I just want to throw it out there. People like,
Well, and the numbers are, we get desensitized by the numbers. I was speaking at a Keller Williams office yesterday, and most of the agents in there were newer agents and not doing social media and trying to figure out what they're going to do.
uh,
And one of the things I said to them was, you hear all the time these numbers that certain accounts get, right? Like 10,000 views, 50,000, 2 million views.
yeah,
The numbers that you're normally hearing, just whether you're listening to a podcast or just in general, nobody, nobody's talking about, yeah, this guy had 52 views on that video. Like
Right.
people are talking about the big stuff that's
Yeah.
happening. And so I think we get really desensitized. And I've had to force myself, especially because I'm really competitive and I'm looking at it more of like the number counts going up. Like
Yeah.
it's coming more from my competitiveness than me like getting my own self-worth for it.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
But I've had to force myself to not even look at it. Like I know I'm close to 60,000 and I've had times in the past where like I'm checking them like 59,422. Like I've had times where I've been there, and then whenever I find myself getting there, I'm like, nope, just don't even think about it.
Back away
So
from it.
I know I'm close to 69,000, but I can honestly say I don't know where I'm at. I haven't looked in.
That's good. And that's
In
not what
like,
you're doing. And that's
yeah,
huge. I
yeah.
think that's
But
super huge.
what I told them was that you need to think about it from a different perspective. So I told them, said, if you start putting out videos now, and 120 people on average are watching your video, that watched your video. And so I said, let's compare this to door knocking. I said, all of you are or have told you should be door knocking, right? Which is going to take a whole Saturday. How long is it going to take you to knock on 120 doors? And if you knock on 120 doors, how many of them are actually going to answer? So I said, anyone door knocked lately? And one said, yeah, I went like last weekend. And I think she knocked on like 76 doors and 10 people answered and she got one contact info like from that person. And it
Yeah.
took her most of the day. It
Yeah.
was hot. So I'm like, okay, so what if you knocked on those 70 doors and all 70 answered and all 70 listened to you talk?
Yeah.
You didn't get all their contact
But
information,
they heard you.
but they heard you. They saw your face. They knew who you are. Would that be a good day? She's like, that would have been amazing. I said, well, that's the opportunity for social media. And a big part of it, people get discouraged just because they're desensitized by
Yeah.
the
They hear these
numbers.
huge numbers. And I try to
Yeah.
tell people, like, I was talking to somebody yesterday and I was like, people, to me, like social media, any success, right? It's like sports. Like how many kids did all the sports growing up, maybe high school, maybe even college or whatever, that had dreams of being, at the top, being professional? What percentage of them actually make it? I think
Yeah.
it's similar to social media. Like you dig in, and so many factors have to come together. And like we were talking before, usually the manufactured ones don't do as well, right? It's normally the people that do something because they're passionate about it, which I
Yeah.
think is in everything in life, even business, right?
Yeah.
But it's you can put in the work, but those million views, those you know people making $100,000 a month on their social media and stuff like that, those are like the pro players that are the 1% that made it for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
It's not the norm. But if you get somebody, if you're getting those eyeballs, right? Like you're saying, you're staying front of mind, because a lot of times you'll see it's a lot of the same people that are watching it and liking it. But if they're learning from it and you're reaching them, then you've got a platform now that's going to help you, right? And
Yeah.
real estate, I mean, it only takes, if you're doing, like, again, you guys put out a ton of content, but even if you're doing like a weekly or a bi-weekly video, in 6 months, if you get one deal from that, and you're making 10, 20, $30,000, it's time well spent, right?
Yeah.
And then the referrals and stuff like that. And then on the other part of it, like when you talked about the trust factor, put out stuff like you're doing, and what, like my weekly videos and stuff like that. I don't ask people, I'm not pitching our products or services. I'm just trying to give some value, some nugget of information that hopefully
Yeah.
people can use, right? Like you're turning them on to a good spot to eat. That's great. Like every day we're trying to figure out where to eat. Everybody does, right? Everybody has that same conversation. Where are we going to eat? I'm trying to give them, here's some ideas of what you can do for influencer marketing, email marketing. Give value. Don't sales pitch. Don't
Yeah.
boost your ego. Don't talk about yourself, right? Like they're not there. They're there to follow you and learn from you. They're not there to get you rammed down their throat. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think that's something too.
Yeah. Most people ask too fast or immediately. I mean, it would like starting social media and putting out one video and doing a sales pitch in that video or asking someone to buy or to respond in some way. It'd be like going up to a
Done.
girl in the bar and just asking her to marry you.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't even know your name.
Yeah.
Talk
You
to
got to
you.
court these people and
Yeah.
build trust, build a community, and building
Yeah.
the community is a huge part of it.
Yeah. And that takes time. Yeah.
Yeah. So you definitely know that it's an investment in time. And you're right, dude. It is time consuming. Even it's nice that things aren't as produced. Like I always say, like you don't need all of this to do it, right? A lot of times with even like a client, I'm like, just start doing it on your phone. It's going to be uncomfortable being in front of the camera. Like you've done it forever, you're comfortable, but I'm sure it's still not like a natural thing to put yourself in front of it and stare at yourself talking or whatever.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to have super lighting. Like if you have a decent phone, make the effort,
Yeah.
right? That's the first step in my opinion. Like take time to just film some things, use like a cap cut or something where it's not terribly technologically challenging to clip it down and make it like you do a great job of transitions, keeping things short, keeping the attention span like from scene to scene. It's not one long
Yeah.
thing, you know what I mean? So kind of learn that kind of stuff, but it's not going to be perfect right out of the gate. I've got videos that are wild from 10 years ago or whatever, just the quality of them or what I might have been thinking at the time.
Yeah.
But just do it. Start to build a habit of trying to do it. Know what you want to talk about, know who you want to talk to, right? Who your target audience is to. But just get out there and do it, right?
Yeah. I know. I tell people, they'll say, well, I'm not going to be good at first, and then I'm going to put out bad content. And I say, well, the only people that are going to watch them at first are just your mom and your close friends
Yeah.
anyway. So
Yeah.
no one else is seeing them anyway. So it's a good thing because it's like you have this safe runway, right, to make your mistakes and figure out what you want
And
to
take
do and
criticisms
get
from
better,
those people and
get
feedback.
feedback. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense.
But to go back real quick to the people follow people, and you had mentioned dentists. So I had an interesting experience where there's a dentist that I follow that newsfeed every so often, and subconsciously like hadn't showed up in a while, and then a video popped up, and the doctor had put himself in the videos before. It's not like he never did it, but all of a sudden he did like 5 or 6 videos in a row where he was wearing the same color scrubs or whatever he
Mm.
wears. It the closeness of his face, it was just very similar. It was recognizable,
Hmm.
right? And so I think I had seen subconsciously, it was all this was completely subconscious on my part. Maybe two, maybe 3 videos had popped up. I just went by them because I know him and I wasn't interested in listening to dentist information at the time.
Yeah.
So it popped up, but I just scrolled through it. And I think subconsciously after the second or third time, probably over a week and a half period, maybe 2 weeks, the third or fourth one, I clicked on it and I watched it. And I didn't think like, hey, that's similar. Looking back, it was all subconscious, but
Hmm.
I had seen 3 similar shots, videos for that 1.7 seconds. And I watched the next one. And then 3 days later, when another came out, I watched that one and two. And it was by the time I watched the second video, I'm like, wait a minute, what? And then I thought back and realized, like, okay. And that just really plays into one, people follow people. I know him, I've met him. He's my dentist, actually. Um, and him putting out that consistent content that looked similar,
Hmm.
the same, it's subconsciously caught my attention. I found myself for the first time watching all his videos as
Interesting.
well. Yeah. And it's interesting, funny too, that I've taken a lot of, because you were talking about like me developing my
Yeah.
style, and really it just started with just being just completely myself. And I was really awkward. I watched that first one at the substation, and literally I just like take a bite and I go, just shake my head. I'm like, put my head down. I look like I'm a hostage. Like I'm a hostage. This is what I look like in that video. Actually, the video I posted last night, I did like a thing about my restaurant club versus shot, whole bunch of shots of all these different restaurants, and that's the clip I chose for this
Nice.
substation there. But it was a progression of just being myself, but then being very intentional and paying attention to where at the time when I started, I've worn a black hat for years, but I had like always black with white writing, but I would have like a Dodgers hat or a Stussy hat or, 10, 15 different black hats with white writing that I would just cycle through. And at the time, my LA hat, the Dodgers hat was my favorite one, just black with, and I was maybe a month into posting and someone commented and said, hey man, why are you wearing an LA hat if you're all about Riverside?
No,
I was like, dang.
got
So,
me.
so I'm like, okay, I need to wear a Riverside hat every day. So I started wearing a local Riverside hat every day. And then later down the road of wanting to be intentional about branding and all that. I'm like, okay, I was rotating it. I had the same one I wore most time, but I would do once I'm like, okay. And it wasn't specifically Riverside, it was an Inland Empire hat. I'm like, I need to have a Riverside. Like, I need to go all in on
Yeah.
this. Like, realizing that first comment that I'm like, okay, they're paying attention to what I'm doing, to what I'm wearing, to what I'm saying.
And they understand Riverside is the intention, which is
As the
huge.
intention. Yeah. So then eventually just like created my own Riverside. I'm like, okay, this is the hat. So there were little things like that, even where like I say, oh yeah, a lot just naturally in my normal life. Like I'll say like, oh nice, or oh yeah, like 2 things that come out of my mouth. My kids would always make fun of me. Like there was a water bottle called Oh Nice, and my son Tristan sent me a picture like, Dad, look, Dad, you have your own water.
Nice.
Because I just say phrases like that a lot.
Yeah.
So I had a video. I didn't realize I was saying "oh yeah" a lot, and someone said, "Hey, you didn't say "oh yeah" in that video." I'm like, okay, there's another one. So as I
Interesting.
would get feedback like that, I'm like, okay, do that more often. But then there's a fine line of being genuine still,
Yeah.
and doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Trying
But
to force an oh yeah when it's not
yeah,
there, but
so as that process was happening and kind of figuring out my brand, and it was more letting it evolve versus creating it, and so, but intentionally, like
being
almost like
mindful of it,
being a
like,
parent,
yeah,
like you're kind of, a lot
let's
it
get a better
is.
shot of that hat.
Yes.
Switch back to the two camera.
But one of the things I realized recently was that so many similarities to it, to what I've done to like 80s and 90s TV sitcoms. And so I grew up on TV, especially in the 80s and the
Yeah.
90s. I was a TV kid,
How old are you?
48.
Okay, I'm 45, so
Yeah. So coming home watching the People's Court at 3 o'clock every day after school. Like I had my shows that,
homesick. You watch The Price is Right, maybe.
uh-huh. Yep. Price is Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I had, Wonder, like middle school, the Wonder Years came out. Like that was my show. Like, so when that show came on and I just heard the first note of that song, or like I remember Saved by the Bell at one point at the beginning of it, that the bell rings, and then it goes into the music. Like there's something happens in your favorite show when you hear that first note or that first
Yeah,
word. It's like, oh,
I'm settling in for it. I'm ready.
yeah, and it hooks you in. And then throughout the process, you have different characters, and you have like Family Matters. Like he has his taglines, or Urkel says, like, "Did I do that?"
Yeah,
And if you love that show and you love that character, every time he says
it's
it,
still burned in my head.
yeah,
Yeah, I
every time.
heard it in his voice when you said that.
Yeah, it gives you a little feel, right? If you like that, or
Yeah,
like Seinfeld is one of my favorite shows. Every time Kramer would come sliding in through the doors, like, just makes you feel so good, right?
yeah.
So I think the current landscape of social media, and I think this is going to increase even more and more as we move forward, um, is that there's a lot of elements of that in social media
Mhm.
where like I'll use the same song for a long period of time, just so like as soon as someone hears that song, it's like, oh, if at the same time they're seeing me, they're seeing the food, so I'm hitting them with food. They're
Yeah,
seeing
like I
my
never have my
face.
audio on, to be honest. Like
Yeah,
on social media, I generally don't, unless I feel like somebody's talking and I need to listen to it.
right.
But you still have a very consistent, like I know exactly what, and not in a negative way, but I know what to expect. I know what I'm going to see. I know what highlights, I know
Yeah,
I'm going to get away from your videos as soon as I see them, right? So I know,
yeah,
and I'm comfortable watching it because I know it's something that I, I don't know. I think it's a good thing. Like you're saying, it's the branding. Like I know in a positive way, kind of what I'm going to expect.
yeah.
And if I've already enjoyed it, then I know I'm going to enjoy this one, right?
Yep. And I think that's why layers are important too. Where like the music was one piece, but you have your audio off a lot of
Yeah,
the times. So from the overall branding, because branding is obviously a buzzword right now, and people are trying to figure out what it is, and
yeah.
personal branding. And I think the best definition I hear, you follow Christo.
No,
He's great. Check him out on
okay,
YouTube. Dio. He does a designer, but he puts out amazing content. He's similar to like an Alex Ramosi type
okay.
content, but he comes from the design world. Um, I think it was him. The definition he said is he probably got it from someone. He was probably quoting like for probably 8 people down the line that he
Right, right,
quoted.
right.
But it was branding is the general public's perception of you, and based on how you make them feel. So it's not a black outfit. It's not a logo.
Yeah.
It's
It's
not.
not your brand guide.
Yeah, but it
It's
is all those things,
right,
right?
right.
Because
They
it's
all
like,
support it.
yeah, it's like Nike. Nike, I've loved Nike since I was a kid. I wanted Jordans. The Jordan threes came out when I was in 8th grade, and it was like I didn't get them then, but I didn't get them till later. But like that shoe and Nike and Jordan was just everything. So for me, Nike, especially the Jordan brand Nike, there's just a feeling, and it's not just the swoosh, it's not just the the Airman logo. It's not just those individual things,
Well,
but
those are the
it's
triggers, like you're saying, like the music or the hat. Like those are the
yeah,
triggers that remind you of what
yep,
you love about it.
and
You're buddies with Jared and Brian, so I'm sure
yeah.
Jared's shoe collection is
Oh yeah,
seems like he has. I've only seen one picture of just like a wall of shoes, so I'm sure that he's got.
it's several walls now.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Dude is
several walls.
wild. Dude is wild.
I love that guy though. He's so great. Yeah,
Yeah.
so when I got my real estate license, that's who I worked with.
Okay.
And I had done the Real Producers magazine for it was about 2 years at the point.
Oh, gotcha.
And so I had met with I met with just about all the top agents in the Inland Empire, and those guys were
So
my
you're
top
not part
guy.
of Real Producers anymore? Is that what you're
Mm-mm.
saying? Okay, because that's
No,
still out there, right? Like I
it's
think
still,
they
yeah.
just were on the cover.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, for the car
gotcha.
issue. Yeah, so my ex still
Oh yeah, they
runs
got
it.
some cars.
Oh, I know. But she still runs it, and they do a great job. It's doing really well.
Of
Yeah.
all those amazing cars, I think it was Brian's red Mustang would be the one that I would take.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got some
It's a
amazing stuff, but
67, I think.
I only saw one picture of it real quick, but I
Yeah.
was like, dang, of course they got a gorgeous
I
Mustang.
think it's a 67, yeah.
Oh, that'd be
But yeah,
amazing.
Jared, I was working with them and he wasn't into shoes yet. And I had a pair of like Jordan ones I think I was wearing. And he texted me one day. He's like, "Hey, I need some new shoes. Your those are Jordans you wore, yeah? Those are pretty cool. Where'd you get those at?" And I said, "Well, there's a place in the mall. You're gonna pay more." I said, "You'll get a better deal online, but." And knowing Jared, I was like, he's going to go today to the mall. He's not going to wait.
Yeah.
I'm like, you can wait and save a little bit of money and get them online and and have a bigger option. But if you want something now, here's a store in the mall that has a ton of retro Jordans. He's like, all right, cool, thanks. And then I said, hey, he's like, what? Before he left, I go, I hung up the phone. I said, I'm warning you. It's going to become an addiction. He's like,
Yeah.
okay. And then maybe 3 or 4 months later, I saw him. He's like, man, you were not lying. He's like, I bought so many shoes.
You're his plug that got him in his shoes.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to, is it Six Rings or whatever right here on Indiana? Have you ever been to that shoe store?
No,
There's one
no.
right on the other side of the freeway right here that
Oh, okay.
if you're, I don't know anything about them, but they're right next to my Kung Fu studio.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Um,
there's one back then it wasn't there yet, but it's over by the Plaza, West Coast Luxuries. There's
I'm
one
not
there
cool enough
too.
to like fashion wise to be into shoes right now.
Yeah.
I'm such a plain Jane on that stuff, but
Although most days I just wear Vans. It's my
right.
go. Yeah.
That would be my choice for either comfortable. So people starting out and kind of getting to social media, I guess we've given them a ton of great ideas, right? Or great suggestions. Um, what are some of the things that maybe they should avoid? Like, I mean, it's probably countered a lot of things we told them to do, but
Yeah.
maybe like if there was like 3 or 4 things you could just be like, dude, just don't ever do that.
Yeah.
What are some of those things?
Um, I'd say the one that's general that applies to all social media accounts is to just stay away from the like tabloid, like, you know, clickbait,
Sensational, clickbaity
sensational
stuff.
type stuff. Yeah.
I
Cause
feel
it
that.
will get you views, it will get you followers, but it's not going to get you trust and engagement. And
Yeah,
so,
it's short term,
yeah. So if you're in a short term or a long term game, if you're in a long term,
which
if you just,
everybody really should be, I
yeah,
would
should
think,
be.
right?
I mean, if you just want to build a huge social media account and like try to sell it or get out or
Yeah,
like it,
that's
but
different.
that's different. But even with that, the value is not going to be there to where I'm at the point where like IHP reached out to me and they specifically said, we realize that people are following people now. Like they said that line,
Nice.
and they're not following us. They're not going
Uh,
to follow us. So
yeah.
they're
And
following
they're
you.
huge people. So keep this in mind. They probably got a great budget for these
Huge.
efforts. And
There's
that realization is such an important thing in the landscape right now. Like
they're spending 6 figures a month
a month.
on
Yeah.
their marketing and advertising.
Yeah.
Yeah, where I do everything on my phone for free. So
Right.
but so companies like that, and that was my hope and my thought 2 years ago was like, I know that this is where the attention is. I know that this is where the money is being made. People are making spending decisions based on their phone and social media
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, I'm like, I don't know how long it's going to take. I hope it's not too long, but large companies are going to realize that, and they're going to realize. And when that happens, I want to be at the front of the line, and I want to be one that, whether it's IHP, a state funded, organization, to whatever it is, that they'll feel comfortable putting their logo next to mine and their brand
And
next
they'll
to
have
mine.
that trust.
And
There's a stat I put on the video yesterday. Is I think it was 63% of people trust an influencer's review and opinion about a product or service over like Yelp reviews. And,
yep.
it's essentially, it's a referral, right? It's a
Hmm.
person to person referral shotgunned out to all of their followers, which is
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. And so with your question, I think things not to do, I'll touch on what you just said now. Like, I think by me being genuine, being myself, being honest, not taking money from these businesses, it's created more. And I've seen the evolution of when I get recognized in public. So at the beginning, it was, "Are you on Instagram? Are you?" There's like, you could tell they're not
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
but they'll say it. And went from that to, "Hey, you're that guy.
Well,
So
and
it
your
wasn't.
brand carries through in your life, right?
Yeah,
Your hats, your
it's
black
always
outfit, your
yeah,
beard. And I saw
yeah,
you before with the beard. I think the beard really ties in
yeah,
the feel.
yeah. It was
But
the finishing piece.
yeah.
But it went from I think you're that guy to you are that guy um to you're the Riverside guy. And it just kept getting more specific. Now people walk up to me and it's confusing for me because I don't know if I know them in real life. But it's like they feel
They're
like
like, hey, Mark, how you
yeah,
doing,
they're like,
man?
Mark, what's up? And I'm
And I'm
like,
like,
do I know this
oh,
person?
that's got to be tough because you're like, I don't
Yeah,
want to offend them by not remembering them from, because I'm sure you do all kinds of social, like I'm sure you're at all
yeah,
kinds of events and restaurants. So I'm like, you probably meet a ton of people at the same time, but then
yeah.
you got to,
But that progression of what they say from I think you're that person, you are that person to you're the Riverside guy to your Mark. I think because of that trust. But so that's one thing in terms of what to do is just to be honest and be genuine and be
I
yourself.
want to touch on something real quick for your honest. To the extent of, I was watching your video the other day where somebody asked about um, your mannerisms, your
Yeah.
twitchiness. I don't want to
Oh
say it,
yeah.
but right. But you didn't just like, you didn't ignore it. You weren't offended by it. You're like,
Yeah.
dude, this is who I am. This is why it happens. You know,
Yeah.
whatever. Right. Which is, I was like, I thought that was a really powerful, and I don't think you did it like with a conscious decision. Like if I answer this way, I can get a bet. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just they asked, I'm going to answer,
Yeah.
and it was a real genuine moment for you. And I think that's part of like allowing that, right? And not just like I said,
Yeah.
not being offended or ignoring it was probably a huge moment for like helping the trust with your community because you were just
Yeah.
super vulnerable at that moment,
Right.
which was
Yeah.
cool.
Because I've probably gotten that comment probably 20 times. And usually and I'm older, so but usually as an older person, and I'm like, stop moving around so much. You're giving me a headache. So I've gotten some version of that comment probably 20 times, which I don't get offended easily. Take things personal. I just thought it
Yeah.
was funny. So
Well, that's
and
another thing. You got to have thick skin if you're going to go on social media
you have
because
to.
there's always going to be people that are haters
Yeah.
that don't understand or just are jealous or whatever, right?
Yeah, you have to. But it was funny. So I was like, I move around like that because of my ADHD and it's called stemming, so I did that video. I was like,
Oh, is
this
that
is,
so? When I heard it, I thought you were also doing like the nicotine, not nicotine, like caffeine or something like
oh
that,
yeah.
stemming. I have ADHD. I move around a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, this whole time we're talking, I'm fidgeting and clicking my nails because I have it too. So I
Oh
get it.
yeah.
But
My finger and my foot have been doing this the whole time,
yeah,
and that
yeah.
keeps my
I have to
body.
cross my legs so that I
Yeah.
don't shake the table.
Yeah.
I feel you.
Yeah. So it was just in the moment, like I got that comment again, and I was like, just not a lot of thought into it and put it out there. But I think the biggest thing not to do. Have you read Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm listening. I listened to it 3 times in the last 2 months.
Yeah. So such a good book.
Yeah, and I'm changed. I'm retooling, trying to retool everything around that.
Yeah. So good. And the main thing that I took from it was a big part of what he was putting out there was to not be the hero of the story. And I think that's the biggest mistake, especially businesses. So if you're a business and you're looking to grow a social media account to make themselves the heroes, and real estate agents, me being in that world for so long, are the worst at that. I mean, you watch their social media and it's braggadocious. It's
I always
telling,
joke because they got their faces on their cars, their business
yeah,
cards. Like I'm like, you guys are just everywhere. Your face is
right.
everywhere. But
But think about it. Like I have my face on everything, but
it's
it's
a
different,
different. Yeah, your face is out there doing something.
right?
Their face is just
And this
stuck
is
on things.
and this is why, right?
Yeah,
Why can
yeah.
I put my face on things and it's annoying when they do it, right? And I think the difference is that in that book, he's saying, don't make yourself the hero of the story. I'm not the hero of my Instagram. Riverside is.
Well, yeah,
And
the
then,
restaurant you're at or whatever, you're the guide,
yeah,
right?
I'm the
So
guide.
so just real quick for people that haven't read it, and you should absolutely read it. My buddy, I don't know if you know him, Derek Anderson has an IT company out here. He turned me on to it, and he's going through the program with them, and he did it in
Mm,
the past, and it helped him a lot. But the cliff notes, I think, is that being the hero is like you're actually kind of putting yourself in a competitive space with them for ego and stuff like that. But essentially, you're saying being the hero is saying, here's why I'm great. Here's why you should use me. Or here's why you should like me. Whatever. Me.
who you
Right.
work with matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Who
what real
you work
estate
with
agents say.
matters. And then versus the guide who somebody's like, hey, you are the hero that's going to accomplish this. Here's what you can, here's a tool you can use, or here's information you can use or whatever, where or here's this cool restaurant, or here's this
Yeah.
nugget. Like you're just giving versus trying to like receive ego essentially, right?
Yeah.
But you're there to guide people and help people. So yeah, dude, that's That's
Yeah.
cool. That's important.
He says, be Obi-Wan Kenobi and not Luke Skywalker.
Yeah,
Where,
exactly. Whoever your audience is, especially on the business side, like it applies to what you're doing absolutely too. But
yeah,
and it's something where like even in my marketing materials, they were about we've been around for so long, we've done this, we've done that, we've done that, right? And it's we. And listen, I was like, shoot, that makes sense, right? Like
yep,
they don't really care. Like you can even close them without going through the we. It's there's more to it. Like you need to show
yeah.
testimonials and stuff. Like you need to show why they should trust you as a guide, right? Like
But if you do the first part, then you can do the second part.
yeah,
And it's like
yeah,
when you look at, he uses, I'm pretty sure it's been a while since I went through the book and I've told this story so many times, but he talks about Apple like being such a good
yeah.
example of that.
Well, yeah,
Where,
he sucked at it, and then I'll let you tell it.
yeah, so in, I think it was 85, Steve Jobs quits or gets fired from Apple or whatever, however it went down. And in 97, he comes back to run the company. If you look at 1993, Apple had, I think it was 14% market share for personal computers. So it was IBM and Microsoft and
Yeah,
Apple. So 14% market share in 93 to fast forward 97, they had 3%.
yeah,
And so at the time, Apple was, a lot of people think was circling the drain and was in a dangerous place if they were even going to make it. So
yeah.
Steve Jobs comes back, makes two big changes. One was they had a ton of their product line was enormous, and he just shrunk their product line and said, "We're going to do these things really, really well and get
Yeah,
rid of all this other stuff."
yeah.
Super smart. But the other thing was looking at their marketing and branding. At the time, they had 26 different marketing campaigns running all over the country.
Very wordy, lengthy ones as well.
Very wordy, very lengthy, weren't consistent. Looking at one versus the other is like, is this even the same company?
Yeah.
Branding was terrible. And so he did their Think campaign that they put out
Think different.
Think different. Or IBM at the time, their campaign was Think IBM. So it was actually a shot at them
Oh,
too. So
nice. Yeah.
and again, IBM, and that even just those words are a perfect example of it. So IBM was like, think us,
Right.
think IBM, think
Yeah.
us, we're the best. And then Apple comes along and says, no, think different.
Yeah.
So that they weren't saying think about Apple because we're different. They're
Right.
like, no, you think different. So then
You do it.
their whole
We'll
ad,
guide you.
yeah, yeah. So their whole ad campaign was a series of black and white images of like Gandhi and Mother Teresa and John Lennon and
Yeah, I
Muhammad
remember.
Ali and
Yep.
Bob Dylan and I think the first words are here's to the misfits, the troublemakers.
Yep.
It almost sounds negative at first, right? And you're seeing these beloved faces and even the emotions like, what do you mean? You know, it's this.
But if you think about each one of those people, they did it for the right reason. I
Yep.
think it's in that story, though. I think an important nugget to keep in there is when he left, he went to Pixar.
Yeah.
And he learned storytelling.
Yep.
Right, which ties in that story brand book. Like he
Exactly.
started to understand that and what a whole story brand book's kind of about is like the whole trajectory of the story. And movies were already kind of ruined for me because they're so predictable. But he makes it even worse. But that trajectory and how people think and the guide, the hero, the conflict that has to make a change in the like.
Yep.
So going to Pixar and learning from these storytellers about how to make a good movie and what people resonate with and emotionally how people are triggered and what parts of the brain, the lizard part of the brain or whatever, the simple part, the emotional part, how they're triggering. Like he took that knowledge and was able to come back and do exactly what you're saying, like trim down the fat, change how they presented themselves and blew up from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's people should read that book.
Really should. In fact, I need to read it. I need to go through it again.
I'm an audiobook guy, so I'll be driving for several hours today to Orange County, and that's all I'll do is just listen to that stuff. And that one's cool. And yeah, when even with your social media, so like kind of telling that story and showing, not being the hero, but also kind of thinking like, okay, what resonates with people? And like you said, the 80s sitcom thing, they're following those. They have a formula, right? It's not just an arbitrary series of shots, right? They've have a formula that they're following, and they're just. It's kind of unfortunate because you realize they're just kind of plugging and playing variables, right? Like location, situation, right? So, but that stuff you can apply to your marketing and your social media marketing for sure.
Yeah.
Did you have any other don't do's, or do we pretty well cover it? That don't be a hero one is huge.
Yeah. Don't be a hero. Figure out.
Don't make it about yourself is what that boils down to.
Figure out who your client is, who you're reaching, and make them the hero of that story. I think. To me, it seems like it doesn't need to be said, but just to stay away from, especially for your business, just controversial topics, whether it's politics and, to
politics and religion are things in business that if you have a relationship with it, that's fine. But in general, I think you're right. Somebody came in yesterday and he's like, what are you going to do with your platform? There's so much in the city that needs to be fixed. I was like, that's not what it's for though, man. Like I get that. And personally, I'll try to figure things out, but it's just not what it's for. It's not
No.
what people. It is
And
what people want. People are doing very well. If that's like, I mean, if you want to be a political
yeah.
um, speaker, like if that's what you want your channel to be about,
Yeah. If your
sure,
business is
right?
politics, then yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
be it. But if it's not,
Well,
then
and I look at it too, to where and when it comes to politics, I'm pretty middle of the road. Like I'll lean this way and lean that way.
as everybody should
For
be,
me,
but
it's a buffet, and I'm like looking at each thing. Do I want this? Do I like this? Is this right? Versus like,
yeah,
there's this buffet and that buffet. Which one do you
I
want?
have to pick one. Yeah, I'm
And it's
with you
like,
on that
no,
completely,
like
dude.
there's no way that everything I like, everything I believe is on that one.
It's
Just
not.
it's
It's
not
really
gonna
not.
happen. No,
Now we're gonna start getting into politics
yeah,
now, but
but so really, I realize that I am middle of the road. And so my guess is if people like that follow me and they thought, I wonder where Mark is politically, my guess is that people that are far left probably assume that I am. People that are far right probably assume that I am too. Because since I am middle of the road, it's really easy for me to come across as
well,
being in the middle of the road.
they get to use their imagination essentially.
They're
Like if
just
you're
going to
not touching
assume,
on
yeah.
politics,
It's like, well, he's not talking about the other side, so he must be on my side.
yeah, and if they're like, well, I resonate with this guy and I feel similar to this guy, then they're gonna assume,
Yeah.
right? Which I think is smart.
And then I think there's some companies that, because if you're going to start, if you're a business and putting out political stuff, especially if you're going to choose one side or the other, then you just need to be okay with pretty much doing business with just that side. And then not even just from a business perspective, but just from a life and relationship perspective, I don't want to have just friends or clients or customers that are on one side. Like one of the things I love about Riverside is it's such a melting pot and there's so many different views
Yeah,
and I can have conversations with people that don't think what I think and learn from them, you know? And it's like I don't want to live a life where I'm just choosing to have one. I don't want to eat just
no,
vanilla or strawberry or chocolate ice cream
this is
every day.
probably terrible to say out loud, but the only people that bother me politically and I feel are maybe kind of ignorant or whatever are
Hmm.
the ones that are so set on just choosing it because it's the side, right? Like
Yeah.
in leadership Riverside, I just got into class of 2012, and then one of the questions they asked is, "You're going to run
Oh,
into people with."
I need to do that next year.
I'll let you. That's my first one, but everybody
Yeah.
I've talked to that's done it loves
Yeah.
it. I've only had one session so far, and it was awesome. I'm
Yeah. I've
already
heard
learning
it's
so
great.
much. So, but one of the questions they asked is, you're going to run into very different political views. How will you deal with it? And I was like, I, easily, because I don't know the answers. Like
Yeah.
the people that I do well with, like I have a friend that's super left, right? And I'm more, I don't want to say I'm super right, but I'm more conservative, right?
Yeah.
But we can have conversations because we're both like, okay, this extreme view on this side, and I think this is not specifically political, but it's just how you manage everything. Like these, and even what you're posting about or talking about or whatever, these two ends of the spectrum are the ends of the spectrum.
Hmm.
They're not the end all be all. Like if you can have a conversation in the middle about that makes sense for that and that doesn't make sense for that, or like the world would just be so. I'll just leave it with the world would be so much better if more people were middle of the road in their thinking. That's
Yeah.
that's all. Like
And I think so many more people are. I think the 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 media or the powers that be that put out all the information want us to think that everyone's on one side or the other. Where I think if we were actually to take a poll of everyone in America and make a percentage, the largest group would be the people that are somewhere
yeah,
in the middle,
well, they're the least vocal, unfortunately,
and they're the least vocal. Yeah.
and unfortunately, division is a tactic
Yep.
when you have. I mean, you got two parties essentially that are whatever. Let's not get into
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
theater
Well,
of that, right?
and my page, like, if I base just on, like, I'm very observant. I'm always processing and collecting data, and so like the process of when people would recognize me, what they would say, but I'm also just kind of subconsciously collecting data of what kind of person is recognizing
Mhm.
me, really. And it's across the board. It's a group of middle school kids, and usually one will know who I am, and he's kind of freaking out. And then the other ones are looking at him like,
Who is this guy?
who's this old guy that you're talking to? You know, it's like it's this weird moment.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's like a 90-year-old older woman. Sometimes it's a soccer mom. It's a guy covered in face fat tattoos that comes up to me right in my face and says, "What's up, bro?" And I thought he was gonna kill me,
But
but
yeah.
he's like, "I love your content, man." I was like, "Oh."
Nice.
So it's like
You scare me, fool.
it's across the board. Like
Nice.
and I think that's a testament to the where we are in our society, that we're underneath it all, we're all pretty much the same. You
Yeah.
know, that I'm putting out content that's just about the city and about places to eat, things to do,
Well, yeah,
businesses to
and you're not
use.
putting out polarizing content. Now,
Yeah.
I've had one client that it worked for. Like he was very he owned the gun store down the street. Very vocal,
Yeah.
very strong in his political views. And I was like, let's just lean into it because it's a gun store, first off. So you're already kind of eliminating the other party
Right.
to a big extent, right? Back then more so.
Yeah.
But for him, it really worked. But you're right, though. It's very polarizing. And so I guess there's some situations where if you know that that's your target audience, like people running for office are polarizing intentionally because they want that side's whatever, right?
Yeah.
So there's a few situations where it might make sense, but I think as a general rule, 100%. Like
if your business is selling Harris or Trump shirts, then go.
Yeah, then you need to be diehard polarizing, even if you don't believe it. Like that's that's the drum you're gonna bang. But like ours and the same with like politics and religion. I think they're both from a sales standpoint. I was told very early on in my sales career, like just avoid those topics because there's generally nothing good that's going to come of it. It might be you might build huge rapport with one person because of it, which is great.
Yeah.
But then you might completely lose somebody else because of it. So
another thing not to do mistake is inconsistency in posting. And like I'll look at someone's account and it's like they posted every day for like a week and then they didn't post for a month.
Yeah.
And then they came back and it was once a week and it's just consistent. I tell people it's better to put out mediocre content consistently than it is to put out amazing content inconsistently. Because the algorithms are looking for and understanding the goal of the algorithms is just basically wants you to look in Instagram Reels as long as possible. It wants to keep you there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like
they want you hooked.
It's very simple. Just know that they want you to do this, scroll through and watch as many
hours.
videos.
Yeah.
And the thing that's going to make you stop is if you've done this 20 times and you haven't found anything you don't like, you're going to leave. So they don't want that to happen. So they need those bangers in there that you're going to watch the whole thing and then skip through 11 more.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that they're looking for. And so because they're looking for individual videos that are doing that. So like if I post a video, puts it out in front of my followers, does really well, puts it out in front of a larger audience, does well, and that's go viral because it just keeps going. It's like it's performing well in front of this group, let's give it to more. Did well, let's give it to a bigger group and a bigger group. To where I have a video that's about to hit 1 million that's been doing that now for 3 months. It just won't stop because people keep watching it and posting it.
Which one is it?
The Trash Brothers
really
video. Yeah.
Wow.
I get probably 10 shares a day still of that video where people are sharing the story. So knowing that, and then so obviously it needs to be a good video, right? That people are going to pay attention to. So that's the first thing. So the algorithm's looking for individual videos that people have watched. They've watched it. If they've liked it or shared it or commented on it, that means they really liked
bonuses,
it. Right. So the algorithm's almost like keeping a score. It's like he watched the whole thing and he shared it.
They're not almost, they're 100% keeping a score. Very detailed score.
And shares are at the top of the list for Instagram right now because if you think about it, if you're home in your living room and I'm in my living room and I'm scrolling through and I saw one that I love and I'm like, oh, Austin's going to like this. I just sent you this and you're sending a work email and now you're scrolling on your phone. So now I just got you.
Yeah.
And it's on their cell.
Yeah, you've hooked them in.
So that's why shares are huge right now. They've realized that.
I've noticed some people are like all of a sudden I started getting I won't specifically say who because whatever the strategy is, but I was kind of following their stuff and I like it and I watch it. And then they've got a new person helping with their social media. And now all of a sudden my inbox is filled with shares from that person trying to get me to watch it. Right. So I guess that's the shares element though, is now I'm in there and for a minute I was wondering, I was like, why is this suddenly in my inbox now? But the shares element, I guess, is what makes sense there. And then they're trying to get more people to watch it, which obviously is going to grow it. Yeah.
Because if I share a video with someone and they're not on Instagram and they clicked on it, I just brought them in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So knowing that it's looking for initially just videos because you're 10 swipes into your scroll and it needs you to not leave, right? So it needs to give you that one that's going to keep you on to scroll 11 more times. So then beyond that, it's looking for accounts that put out quality videos that people watch and consistently, because that's the number one thing it's looking for. So if I have an account, I put out a video every day and a lot of people watch it and a lot of people share it.
They're going to love you.
They're going to love me. They're going to put it out in front of, it's looking for me. It's my sales team. It's looking for people that just moved to Riverside.
Well, and it's going to make sure more of the crazy part that I don't think people realize is like, just because people follow you doesn't mean they're going to see it.
Right.
Right. Like only a percentage are going to see it. And it's probably the ones that generally like it or whatever. So if they're seeing quality, consistent content, now they're probably going to let a larger percentage that's probably the first step that you were talking about, right? Like as they move it through the tiers, get it to all their followers. How do they engage with it? it was good. Now to the non-follower tier and
Yeah.
so on.
And that's why, like, take the Trash Brothers video, for example. I think it's at 960,000 views just on Instagram right now.
That's wild.
It blew up right away. And I knew that one, and that because it had story. And I'm always searching for story. And that's probably the best video I've done. Is like, there's a lot of story
I
here.
hate to admit that I don't think I've watched that video yet.
Yeah. You just
That's wild. I'm going to, I'm 100% going to now, and everybody here should
Yeah.
do it. But it's not, you don't need the views, obviously, but
Yeah. But it keeps going because people keep sharing it. And like, it's obviously did really well with my 60,000 followers. So how the heck did it get a million? How did it get all those other
right,
followers?
right.
And it's because it's a quality video. People are watching the whole thing because it's an emotional story. It's about a family and single mom, and like it's real, it's genuine, it's a feel good story. Like it's a positive thing into it. So just hits all the pieces. And then I put it out in my same style. It's edited well, so it communicates effectively.
Yeah.
But because people keep watching it, people keep sharing it, the algorithm's looking for more people that would like it. And so it just keeps going and going and going. But to go back to the consistency, why that's important is that the algorithm finds my account. This guy puts out good videos that people watch, like, and share. And if I was doing it once a week or once a month or once every 2 weeks, I wouldn't doing the exact same videos. If I just spread them out, wouldn't nearly be where I am because the goal is to keep you on that phone as long as possible.
Every day, right?
Every day.
Every day
And
they
it's
want
like,
you, or every hours.
this account has great videos that people watch and engage with, and he does it every day.
You're a content producer for them. They recognize that you're a consistent producer for them.
And they're not just watching. How many people are watching the first video they see of me? But once that new follower comes on, are they engaged in watching the next one?
Yeah,
My engagement's really
it.
high. So it was like, okay, this account not only puts out good videos, does it consistently. So there's going to be one every day for them to see. And so we can put out in front of more people, but all his videos are quality. And so the one he puts out tomorrow, they're going to watch as well. So it just bumps you way up.
And that's, I think they're like, those are all huge pieces of the supports that don't work alone, right?
Right.
Like I could put out a video every single day. It's not going to ensure success. I could put out random high quality videos. It's not going to ensure success, right? So it's the, but when they all come together, you start to see what you're seeing, and that's not easy. And even on the consistent thing, when I first started doing some of our videos, I felt like I needed to be inconsistent. Like I try to have a different background, a different location, a different everything. And it didn't great engagement. Now, like the weekly videos that I share, sitting right here, this behind me, like that the same videos everywhere, and I've seen a lot more people sharing them. And it's not a lot in general, but for our activity, you see it where I think you're right. Like I didn't even think about it but the way you told us, it told me it makes sense. Like they resonate and they recognize it, just like when you see that intro for the 80s show, like you know what you're going to get. So I think that's another great nugget that people should
that consistency and figuring out, in their business, like what's their genuine version of what I'm doing. Like
it's hard.
Do they have purple hair? Like, do you dye your hair like different colors? Well, keep doing that, as long as you want to, and as long as it's genuine, but finding those little pieces. Because even like you said, like you would change the scenery at the times and not have necessarily the consistency at the beginning. I remember in some shows, do you remember a show where like a character, like the actor would get fired, and so they would replace it with a new actor?
But it's the same person on the show, right? Yeah, and they just show me
like it was the same. Like Roseanne did that.
Yeah, you're like, who's this person?
Prince did that with the mom. Yeah, and it bothered me so much because I'm like, we're all just pretending that
this is not a different person.
And I immediately didn't like her because it's not the same person.
100%.
So I think that's an extreme version of it, but it just plays into why people, if it's their show, they want that consistency. They want to know when they show up, when they put on that channel, or when they hit play on that video, that it's going to be that same thing.
Yeah, I was saying, like the consistency. Yeah, absolutely. Is there posting consistently? Have you found that there's better times each day to post, and is it kind of the same for everybody, or is it you'll have to find it through trial and error?
Yeah, I think in a general sense, I don't get super caught up into it, but my goal is if I post in the morning to post around 7, if I post at night on the weekends, I'll post a little earlier, maybe 5:30 or 6. Weekdays, I try to get it up at sometime between 6 and 7. And so,
because when people are laying in bed or on the couch, flipping, right?
So that's when 7 in the morning, I want to be at some point in their morning routine for them to see it, right?
Yeah, so probably right after the coffee when they're sitting.
And then the 5:30 to 7:30 around there is basically, depending on the day, I want to get them after work, maybe either before dinner, just right after dinner. They're in that transition period of, they're going back into the house, but they want a quick escape still, so
Yeah,
get on the
yeah.
toilet and play. So yeah,
Hiding
but
from the kids or
yeah, it's not foolproof. Like I've had times where I try to never post in the middle of the day. Um, and I've done a few times, and then that video did really well, but it's more of the video than
there's a lot of people out there that say it doesn't matter,
yeah, I don't think
right?
it really
But I
does.
think what to your point though, the consistency of win probably matters,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yep.
if they are looking for consistency and yeah, they're absolutely tracking every amount of flick, amount of time, amount of watch, amount of like, amount of for
Yeah.
everybody. Even Netflix has a crazy amount of like they know when you pause, they know when you started, stop,
Yeah.
whatever. So the data's there and it is fueling it. So um if nothing else, I would say maybe just try it, but whatever you end up doing, be consistent, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
and do you edit all your stuff yourself too?
I do, yeah.
What do you
Mm.
use to edit it?
I've used since the beginning. It's just an app out of the App Store called VN
VN.
Editor. Yeah, and I still use the free version.
It's all
Yeah.
that's what I tried to like. It's wild where it went from like I still use my good camera when I film my because I have it right,
Yeah.
but I also have my Samsung S24 Plus has a great camera, so
Yeah.
it does better than that camera sometimes. But it comes back to like if you got a tripod and a camera and a basic app like CapCut or VN or one of those, like
Yeah.
do your homework about what you want to try to do or experiment with different things. Like people generally like I had a guy that worked did a lot of like production stuff. And he's like, like you watch movies and stuff, you'll notice the majority of the scenes are less than 4 seconds before they cut because of attention
Yeah.
span. It's like, you want to learn some of those techniques and read about it, but don't get hung up on them. Just have the
Right.
basics, do it. And like you're editing yourself and it is time consuming. It is something if you're going to make it a real part of your strategy,
Yeah.
accept that it's going to take time. It's going to take work. You're probably not going to blow up overnight, right? Unless you're somebody special,
Yeah.
but the majority are not, right? And you do have to be consistent. I even still struggle with like I try to do my weekly video every Monday. I get in the office, I get busy, and literally yesterday, today's Wednesday, right? Yeah, yesterday I was like, shoot, I need to stop what I'm doing and go film this so I can get it to
Yeah.
my editor and he can send it back, right?
Oh
So
man,
it's
I had so many times the first year where, because I was um the first year doing this, putting out a video at least every day, and not making any money. And I don't think I've ever actually mentioned this on a podcast or in public, but I waited tables at night 6 nights a week the first
oh
year that I
man,
that I did
and doing
this.
this every day,
Well, I did this every day just to pay my basic bills and
yeah,
to stay afloat. And I went and worked at a place in Corona. I was like, so it's like I don't want to be seen. Not that I was embarrassed, but I was just like, I want to go do my job and then I want to come back to
yeah,
Riverside
yeah.
type
Keep them
thing.
separated,
So I did that like for a year. But there were so many times where like I had to work a shift or like at 5 o'clock or whatever, dinner shift, and I needed I was supposed to put out 2 videos that day, and I'd been working on one all morning, and then I realized just because I'm obviously being ADHD, I'm like all over the place. I'm
yeah,
like
yeah.
I have to be a working
So you're
hour.
not the hyper focused one, huh? You're the
No,
alt. Me too. Me too.
I'm like I have to be a working hour, and I need to go shoot and edit and film a video, and I'm like driving around Riverside. This is super early on, and I'm like, I don't know about. I'm like, I need to find a place I know I like, right? Because I if I do it, especially back then, I didn't like it. I
There's
just
only
wouldn't
so many
post it.
restaurants too, and you're trying to do good restaurant. You're trying to show good
Yeah.
stuff, not just everything.
But there were times that first year where I'm scrambling, I'm running into a place, I'm just buying the food, and then I would just like go in the corner and set my phone up and,
Yeah,
it's just me and try to knock it out and edit it but still being genuine and not just pick any place. But there were times that first year where I'm doing that and then I go to put my debit card in and it's like $11.42 and I'm like, I don't know if this is going to clear.
damn,
Like
and you're still
that's
doing
how
it.
scrap yeah, that's how it was that first year. So at times just wanting to get it out. And there were times I always offer to pay for my food, still always do. And there were times where I just had like some cash in my pocket and I'm ordering like, what can I afford to buy? Which is crazy to think now.
Yeah,
Nobody knew that, but I
and you
think,
still push like that's perseverance. Like the
yeah,
time constraints, the financial constraints, and you knew like I think that's part of why you're successful is you knew this was something that you were passionate about and you
yeah,
pushed through those trials anyway.
yeah. And I think we were talking about before, just the barrier to entry for it right now. I think it's never been easier because especially Instagram, YouTube's a different beast, but especially Instagram. the more raw and authentic and real and genuine it looks, the better. And so people that are putting out highly produced, or even just not even
People
highly,
are
but
tuning
it,
out on that stuff.
yeah, people are just tuning out. It's a commercial, and that's why people follow people. And it's not just people follow people that represent a company. No, people want to follow a person that's real and
The
genuine.
company's a vice, like a bonus. I
Yeah,
think my opinion, it's never been the barrier to entry technology and production wise has never been easier.
never been easier.
The barrier to entry for success,
Yeah,
maybe never harder.
never
Because
harder. Yeah,
literally every single person in business that I know at least is
yeah,
trying to create video content. Like it's so wildly saturated. That's kind of
yeah,
why we started the podcast too, is like blogs showing up. Like there's billions now where there's millions of podcasts. So that might be a smaller, less saturated market, but
yeah.
it's wild. But that's why, like you said, like the trust, the genuineness, like
Hmm.
people used to do really well faking it. And you still see some of those videos where like this is all staged, it's all BS.
Yeah.
They're stretching that part out just to get a little more time. Like you can feel that stuff, but I think you feel that more now than ever.
Oh, for
That you're like,
sure.
oh, this is BS and it's a turnoff now.
Yep. Well, and especially taking it back to everyone's has their phone and they're doing this, and you have less than a second about to you're and if you think about your own experience and when you're scrolling, like you're not having any conscious thoughts, right? You're just
Mm-mm.
like,
You're just waiting for something to click.
yeah, and you're not consciously thinking why you just skipped that video. And I do exercises where I'll force myself to stop. Like, wait, why did I go back?
Uh,
And I'll watch the intro. Like, okay, why was I not interested in this? And then I'll get mindless scrolling again. And then if I stop on something, I'm like, okay, why did I stop? And I'll
yeah,
go back to the other one. And I'll get that first second again. And usually I can see right away. It's like, okay, but the stuff that so basically the one thing that as people are doing that they're trying to avoid is anything that's selling them something. It doesn't have to be an ad. Is if their
yeah.
goal is to sell me something, then
I'm good. Yeah,
then
because
I'm moving
I
on.
saw a number you're getting hit with like 3,000 offers a day now
Yeah.
in your life. Like 3,000 a day. That's
Our
nonstop.
brains weren't built to handle what
Well,
we're
in the storytelling book, I think it was right where he
Mhm.
talks about our brains are built for survival, and nourishment is the first thing, and burning calories is that. So if
Yeah.
they're watching something and one they don't understand it, they have to think about it, they're burning calories, or two, they don't feel like it's genuine, then the lizard part of the brain just kind of like you might keep watching it, but subconsciously you've already checked out. You're already
Yeah.
like, nope, this is too much effort,
Yeah.
or this is not something I trust, and your brain's already checked out on it.
Yeah.
That's wild. Well, we're coming towards our hour. I really appreciate you being here. I'm gonna switch it
Yeah. It's a great time, man.
to the wide shot. I feel like we could talk for hours. Um, I'd love to talk to you more too because I
For
think there's
sure.
a lot of experiences that you have that I need to build on and learn from, and the social media game stuff. Well, last thing I
Yeah.
did want to say, you were talking about. I tried to do a daily tip to try to be consistent, and I would come in at 7 every morning before everybody got here, and I try to film myself, and I created a list ahead of time of like 50 of them. I'll be honest, man, I probably got through like 30, and it was
Yeah.
just so tough to get in, film it, edit it, start my regular day. Like, so just hats off to your
Yeah.
perseverance. Like,
Yeah.
it is not easy. I did another video where it's just like, I came in here to film one of my like marketing idea videos. I was like, I was supposed to talk about SEO today, but I just want to say good job to all the video producers, man, because
Yeah.
it's awkward. It's time consuming. You've got to be creative. Like, you're putting out 2 videos a day. There's only so many restaurants. There's only so many businesses that are worth your time, right? So you've
Yeah.
got to like, you don't just get to walk down the street and film everything. Like there's thought that goes into that. There's hunting and finding and qualifying. Like there's just
And
so
you
many elements people don't think about.
and you need to be growing and evolving too. I mean that's blockbuster video, right? Just look at that as the best example of not
Yeah.
evolving and growing. And so even look at what I'm doing. There was, I think when I started posting, there's a real estate agent, Sarah Ayala. She puts out great content. I think she was already posting, starting to do some food stuff. But that was pretty much it. There wasn't a
Mm.
lot of people, very many people putting like every day, so like just a Riverside page. I
Not
think
everybody does it,
yeah,
and
one of
it's
the,
your fault.
yeah. But when I started doing mine and like the style and the version, like nobody was doing it like the way I'm doing
Yeah.
it. And now there's probably 9 pages that are doing
Minimum.
some version of from what I
I
was.
was even buying your stuff for a while, trying to get the cool panic
Yeah,
food shot. Like it was for grand opening, so like,
right.
but
But
same.
because of that is that I'm constantly trying to evolve and change and add more layers to it. But the key part in that is to keep your brand, is to keep everything the same while you change. That's why Blockbuster didn't change, right? I mean, at the time, one of their biggest mistakes was looking at their late fees was like the biggest problem that people had with them. And when they actually looked at, well, what if we got rid of late fees? Their business model couldn't even handle it because it was such a
Integral part of it.
part of
Well,
their
and they passed
revenue.
up buying Netflix, so
Yeah, they could have got it for
cheap.
pennies on the dollar. Well, and they almost so when have you gone deep on that story? This was my favorite story of
Not super
Netflix.
deep.
I was listening to a podcast of one of the guys that started it, and there were two guys that were like business owners or you know good friends, and for years they talked about, man, we got to have an idea, like let's do a business together. I have a couple of friends like that. It's always like
Yeah,
we got to have the next big thing, and they had a bunch of stupid ideas. Like they would I think they actually drove to work together, and so every morning they would on their way to work they'd talk
nice.
about it. And the first idea was not the first idea, but the first version iteration of Netflix was it was before DVDs, so it was VHS was basically to mail people VHS. And so they went to Kinko's or whatever mailbox place, right, post office, and took a VHS and got packaging, see how much it would cost, and they like tested it, mailed it, and then realized that they're just VHS weren't durable. They broke
Yeah,
really
it's
easy,
destroyed probably.
and they were big, and so how it wasn't. They're like, it's just not going to work.
Yeah,
They're too big. It's too expensive to
expensive and
mail them.
fragile.
They're going to break, and so they threw it away. And I think a couple years went by, and then DVDs came out, and so the one guy called him. He's like, "Hey, remember that idea about mailing VHS tapes?" He's like, "DVDs, like, let's test that." So they tested that, mailed like to each other, and like the DVD was perfectly intact, and that's how it started. But
That's
Blockbuster, so once they started getting some traction, then Blockbuster created their own version of it,
yeah.
and I may get the specifics of this wrong, but from what I remember, the first version was a disaster. Second version was a little bit less of a disaster. And then the third one, they figured it out. And some people say that it was better at the time than what Netflix was doing.
Oh.
They improved on it. And they obviously had the market share. So as soon as they figured out the better way to do
Yeah, if
it,
they would have leaned into that.
they would have just destroyed them immediately. But a new CEO came in at the time and scrapped the whole thing. He was like, why are we doing this? This is not going anywhere.
That dude killed the company.
Killed the company. Yeah. Yeah.
That's wild.
But so for me, it's constantly changing and evolving to where I'm not doing the exact same video every time, and
Yeah.
I'm adding layers. And then for that again, I went back and looked at like some of my favorite TV shows. The characters got older, new characters came in. Some, like it changed
Is
a
that why
little
the
bit. There
family
was
started
new
to show up?
storylines. Yeah, so adding, you know, sometimes it's not just that same edited video with the voiceover. I'll do it live or I'll do it with the owner. So I'm keeping the same feel, trying to make it the same, but just adding more layers to make it different. Because now there's so many pages doing exactly what I'm doing. If I'm putting out that same thing, then eventually it's just all going to be
It's going to blur together.
white noise.
The
Yeah.
only thing I would say about that is I think I was talking with the chief on the podcast. We were talking about be mindful of trends
Mm-hmm.
and evolution and stuff like that, but don't just our opinion. Don't just embrace everything that comes around,
Yeah.
right? You still need to be true to yourself, right?
Yeah.
So pull nuggets from it, ideas from it, learn from it, apply it to what you have going.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to grab every new trend that comes around, you're just going to be bouncing around, and there'll be no consistency, right?
Oh,
Which
yeah.
comes back to that.
Yeah.
So be careful with it as you evolve too.
Yeah.
Be mindful of it.
And for the most part, I stay completely away from trends, but I try to figure out.
You're not going to do the 1 second video.
No, never did. No, so I stay away from them, but trying to whether it's incorporating more of my personal life or just still doing that same traditional style video, but I'm adding a different one or constantly changing. One tip I'll give people who are listening that I think a lot of people miss this and don't get it is that knowing the difference between stories and a reel and kind of the purpose of them, where your reel, when you put it out, for the most part, to oversimplify how it works, it's going to go out in front of a test group of people that already follow you. And depending on how well it does, it will go to more of your followers and then outside of your followers. But it's always just going to, for the most part, your followers are going to see that, especially if you're a smaller account.
Okay.
And And initially, sorry, I had it backwards. It's going to go to your followers, but the algorithm is looking for people that are not your followers to give it to.
Your
So
stories or
your
your reels,
reels,
the
yeah,
reels.
your
Yeah, because
reels.
reels they want to put out like shorts more
They want to
publicly.
put it out, yeah. So it's going
Yeah,
to start with your followers, but
if it gets traction,
the goal hopefully is, so if you're a business, that's like your kind of marketing piece, right? So that's going to go out to people that are not following you and
gotcha.
to try to reach them. But for the most part, your stories are just going to go to your followers.
Uh,
And so I have some people that are trying to like reach new customers through their followers. It's
through
like,
the stories.
yeah, they're already following you. So I use my stories for the most part just to be more personal. It's like, okay,
Uh,
these are people that already follow me,
your
engage me.
updates and
So
talking to your
I'll
community.
Yeah, but my personal life. So like pictures of my dog and my family, or
Um,
we went to Castle Park, or we did this, or went to Disneyland,
Interesting.
or
And it leaves your feed, your Reels feed and your main feed keeping to the general populace,
yep,
but you're
yep,
you're giving reality nuggets to that's
yeah.
cool. Okay.
I'll sprinkle in my personal life in all those videos,
Yeah.
but it just touches whether um they're in it or I'm talking about something personal, like that ADHD video. I think that
Yeah.
was a real. But my stories, for the most part, is like these are people that already follow me. If my little circle's showing up at the top of their storyline, it means they watch my stories,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there I'm being personal and
Interesting.
letting them get to know me as a person more.
Oh, that's cool. That's good to know. And that's something, I mean, something I should know better as a digital marketing company, but it makes sense that
Yeah.
because I know that reels are like, I mean, they're like YouTube shorts. They're the thing that they're trying to,
Hmm.
you can get traction on, but I didn't really realize how different you should treat those two things. So that's
Yeah.
great. So cool, man. Well, again, I'm sure you got videos to make today. I know you're super busy. Tony, thank you for putting this together for this. And I really appreciate you spending time to come out, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was fun. If everyone will be back, I'll come back.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Awesome.